Riley strummed her acoustic guitar, a cheap, worn-out instrument that had seen more coffee spills than concert stages. The notes were sweet, though echoing softly in her cramped Memphis apartment. Outside, the summer sun beat down, but inside a different kind of heat hummed the burning desire to make something, to be something. She'd come to Memphis for one reason: Elvis, not just to chase the ghost of the king, but to understand the magic, the raw power, the heart that had captivated millions. She was a singer, doker, 20 years old, with a voice that could soar and a pen that could bleed. But lately the well had felt dry. Every song sounded like 100 others. Every melody felt borrowed. She was stuck, hovering between aspiring artist and just another dreamer, in a city full of them. Graceland had been a pilgrimage. She'd walked to the rooms, seen the jumpsuits, felt the energy. But it was like looking at a masterpiece through a thick pane of glass. She admired it, respected it, but couldn't quite touch the true essence of the man. The legend was so big, so dazzling, it sometimes obscured the human being beneath it. He was just a man, you know, her grandpa had told her once, his eyes twinkling. A man with a voice, sure, but also a man with doubts, with worries, with a soul. Her grandpa had been a lifelong Elvis fan, not just for the music, but for the way Elvis carried himself, the kindness he showed. He'd talked about Elvis's generosity, his search for meaning beyond the spotlight. That conversation had sparked something in Riley. She started digging deeper, looking for the quiet stories, the moments when Elvis wasn't performing. She read biographies, watched documentaries, but still, something was missing. It was like piecing together a puzzle with half the pieces gone. One sweltering afternoon, she was browsing a dusty old bookshop on a side street far from the tourist traps. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and forgotten dreams. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, just soaking in the quiet atmosphere. A faint conversation drifted from the back of the shop. Two older men, their voices low. "Never seen anything like it," one whispered. "The notes, you know, profound." "The Bible," the other man murmured, a hint of reverence in his voice. "He carried it everywhere, they say." Riley froze her hand, hovering over a book on American music history. The Bible? Elvis Presley's personal Bible? She'd heard whispers, of course. Stories about how religious Elvis was, how he sought spiritual guidance. But notes, profound notes, that was new. That felt like a doorway, a hidden path to the man, not just the myth. She slowly moved closer, pretending to examine a shelf of outdated encyclopedias. "Not just little scribbles," the first man continued, his voice hushed. "Whole paragraphs, sometimes his thoughts, his questions, his wrestling with life. Wish I could see it." The second man sighed. "Must be a window into his soul." Riley's heart began to pound. A window into his soul. That was exactly what she needed. Not the screaming fans or the glittering jumpsuits, but the quiet, introspective man who sought answers in a book. If those notes truly existed, if they were as profound as these men claimed, they could be the missing pieces of her puzzle. They could be the inspiration she was desperately searching for. She waited until the men left, then cautiously approached the shop owner, a tall, gaunt man with spectacles perched on his nose. "Excuse me," Riley said, trying to sound casual. "I overheard you talking about Elvis Presley's Bible. Is it a known thing?" The owner looked at her, his eyes assessing. "Depends on who you ask," he said, his voice raspy. "Graceland has some artifacts, of course, but the truly personal items, the ones that show the man, those are different. Rare, guarded." Riley pressed on. "But you think it exists? A Bible with his personal notes?" This was it. This was the quest. This wasn't about fame or money or even writing a hit song. This was about connecting with the spirit, understanding a journey, finding a source of wisdom that might just unlock her own creative block. "Do you know where I could find more information?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Or maybe someone who's seen it." The shop owner leaned back, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Memphis is a small town for those who truly seek," he said cryptically. She thanked him profusely, her mind already racing. Mr. Henderson, a music store on Beale Street. Felt like the start of an adventure, not just a casual search. She wasn't looking for a celebrity's autograph anymore. She was looking for a soul. And she had a feeling this Bible with its profound notes was the key. She walked out into the bright Memphis afternoon. The sun still hot, but now it felt different. It felt like a spotlight, shining on a new path. Her cheap guitar felt lighter on her back. The notes she'd played earlier, sweet but hollow, now seemed to hum with a promise of future melodies. The quest had begun, and Riley knew deep in her gut that this was going to change everything. The music store on Beale Street wasn't hard to find, but it wasn't what Riley expected. It wasn't a sleek, modern shop filled with polished guitars and digital recording equipment. Instead, it was crammed with vintage instruments, stacks of old Paimon records, and shelves overflowing with forgotten sheet music. The air smelled of wood dust and decades of forgotten melodies. It felt less like a store and more like a time capsule. Riley stepped inside the jingle of a bell announcing her presence. An old man sat behind the counter, half hidden behind a towering stack of blues records. He had a shock of white hair, a grizzled beard, and eyes that seemed to have seen every chord ever played on Beale Street. This had to be Mr. Henderson. "Can I help you, young lady?" His voice was gravelly, like a worn-out record. Riley's heart fluttered. She suddenly felt a little nervous-like. She was asking for something too sacred. "Yes, sir," she began. "I was told I was hoping you might be able to help me." "I'm Riley," he just grunted, waiting. His gaze was steady, not unkind, but piercing. "I'm a musician," she continued, "and a big admirer of Elvis Presley. I've been researching him, not just the performances, but the man himself. And I heard about his personal Bible, filled with his own notes." Mr. Henderson leaned back, pushing his spectacles up his nose. A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the faint hum of an old refrigerator in the corner. Riley thought he might just dismiss her, tell her it was all a rumor. Finally, he spoke. "Lots of stories about Elvis, kid. Most of them are just that, stories." "This one, it feels different," Riley insisted, her voice soft but earnest. "They said the notes were profound, that they showed a side of him no one ever saw." He studied her for a moment longer, his eyes seeming to bore into her. "And why does that matter to you?" "Because," Riley said, meeting his gaze, "I feel stuck as a musician, as a person, and I feel like if I could understand him, the man behind the legend, maybe I could understand something about myself, about what it meaning." Mr. Henderson closed his eyes for a beat, then opened them again. "A lot of people come through here," he said, "wanting a piece of Elvis, a pic, a photo, a story. Most of them just want to touch the fame." "You sound different," Riley nodded, relieved. He wasn't outright dismissing her. "I don't want a souvenir, Mr. Henderson. I want understanding. I want inspiration." He slowly reached under the counter, pulling out a battered old cigar box. He opened it, revealing not cigars, but a collection of yellowed photographs, old ticket stubs, and what looked like handwritten lyrics on faded paper. Picked up one of the photos, a blurry black and white shot of a young Elvis smiling shyly. "I knew him a little, Mr. Henderson," said his voice softer, now tinged with memory. "Back when he was just starting out, he used to come in here, trying out guitars, listening to records. A quiet kid, really. But when he opened his mouth to sing, well, you know the rest." Riley listened, captivated. This was real. "Carried that Bible everywhere," Mr. Henderson continued, his gaze distant. "Even when he was riding high, even when the world was screaming his name, he'd sneak away, find a quiet corner, and he'd read, and he'd write." "So it's true," Riley breathed. "More than true. They were his lifeline, his confessional, his conversation with himself. They showed a man wrestling with angels and demons just like the rest of us, only his were amplified 1,000,000 times over." Riley felt a surge of excitement. Do Do you know where it is now? Mr. Henderson chuckled. That's a question a lot of folks would like an answer to. The original, who knows? Some say it's at Graceland, locked away. Others say it's with his family, transcribed. For those who truly seek, Riley held her breath. He transcribed everything he could find, every note, every thought, into a replica Bible. He believed it was important that Elvis's spiritual journey, his inner world, with her tincture. Not just a replica, Mr. Henderson corrected, a hint of pride in his voice. A meticulous recreation, every note, every underline, every question mark. My father poured his life into it. He called it the King's Heart. He believed it held the true spirit of the man. Riley was speechless. This was beyond anything she could have imagined. She had come hoping for a hint, a rumor. And she was being offered a chance to see a piece of Elvis's soul. Mr. Henderson studied her again. A long, thoughtful look. My father left it to me when he passed. He told me to keep it safe and to share it only with someone who would truly appreciate it. Someone who wouldn't just gawk at it, but learn from it. Someone who was searching for something real. He paused, then slowly nodded. You got a good heart, kid. I can see it. And you're looking for more than just a famous name. You're looking for truth. Riley's eyes welled up slightly. She didn't say anything, just nodded, hoping he understood her silent promise to treat this revelation with the respect it deserved. Mr. Henderson pushed himself up from his chair. Come back tomorrow morning, he said, his voice gruff but kind. Around 10. The store's usually quiet then, and we'll see if the King's heart speaks to yours. Riley felt a wave of relief and exhilaration wash over her. She had found it, or rather it had found her. The quest had just taken an incredible turn. She thanked him, her voice thick with emotion, and practically floated out of the store, the jingle of the bells sounding like a triumphant fanfare. Tomorrow she would finally get to see beyond the legend of the profound heart of the king. Riley was at the music store at 9:30 the next morning, practically vibrating with anticipation. She spent the half-hour pacing, the sidewalk arcade P-verts, T-grade, peering through the King's Heart. A meticulous recreation, every note. It felt real, like something out of a dream. Precisely at 10, Mr. Henderson unlocked the door. He gave Riley a small, knowing smile. The store was indeed quiet, the morning light streaming through the front windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Mr. Henderson led her to a small, cluttered back room, barely bigger than a closet filled with even more old records and books. In the center was a small round table, half covered with sheet music. He cleared a space, moving a stack of old magazines. My father worked on this for decades, he said, his voice filled with reverence. Tracked down interviews, private letters, even talked to people who had seen the original Bible at different points in Elvis's life. He wasn't just interested in the public man. You see, he was interested in the searching man. He then reached into a locked wooden cabinet and with a soft click pulled out a thick leather-bound book. It looked ancient, its cover worn smooth, its pages likely yellowed with age. This wasn't just a book, it wasn't Beckett, a testament to a lifelong devotion. He placed it gently on the table. It was a Bible. Undeniably, its size and weight felt substantial, solid. Riley's breath hitched in her throat. She hesitated, almost afraid to touch it, as if its contents were too fragile, too sacred. Go on, Mr. Henderson urged softly. It's meant to be read. Riley reached out, her fingers trembling slightly, and carefully opened the cover. The first thing she noticed was the script. It wasn't formal or elegant, but quick, sometimes messy, sometimes bold. It looked like someone's private thoughts scribbled in the margins, underlined here, circled there. It felt intensely personal, like she was peering over someone's shoulder. My father even matched the handwriting style as best he could from Elvis's other known notes and letters, Mr. Henderson explained, almost whispering. He wanted it to feel authentic, like Elvis himself had just put it down. Riley turned to the first page with notes. It wasn't the very beginning of the Bible, but a section that seemed to have been frequently visited. Her eyes scanned the familiar verses, but then they landed on the handwritten words beside them. Peace, not as the world gives. How do I find it when the world demands everything? This is the struggle. Am I giving enough or too much? Riley felt a jolt. This wasn't the confident king on stage. This was a man wrestling with inner turmoil, with the demands of his extraordinary life. It resonated immediately with her own feeling of being pulled in different directions, wanting to give everything to her music, but feeling depleted. She turned the page. Another note. They want me to be a machine, a product, but God made me a man with a heart that aches, a mind that questions. Never forget that. Never let them forget that. Tears perked at Riley's eyes. It was so raw, so vulnerable. It spoke of the profound loneliness of being a global idol. Constantly under scrutiny. Constantly pressured to be something other than human. She had always seen the dazzling performer. Now she was seeing the struggling soul. He sought comfort here, Mr. Henderson said, his voice low as if reading her thoughts. When the crowds were too loud, when the pressure was too much, when the loneliness felt unbearable, this was his sanctuary. Riley nodded, unable to speak. She flipped through more pages, her fingers brushing over the delicate paper. She saw underlines on passages about humility, about kindness, about giving, and notes like, "True wealth is not gold or fame. It is knowing your purpose. It is helping others. Am I doing enough? Am I using this gift for good? The spotlight is bright, but it casts long shadows. Must remember the light within, not just the one on stage." It was captivating. Every note, every carefully transcribed thought felt like a tiny window into Elvis's mind. It wasn't about theology or religious doctrine. It was about the human condition, amplified by the extraordinary life he led. It was about his search for meaning, for peace, for connection in a world that often felt disconnected. "My father believed that these notes were his true autobiography," Mr. Henderson said. Not the one written by biographers, but the one written by his heart. He felt it was important for people to see that Elvis wasn't just a symbol of excess or fame. He was a man Lee looked up, her eyes wide with wonder. "This is incredible, Mr. Henderson. It's more than I ever imagined," he smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "My father would be pleased. You feel that way." He always said these notes had the power to inspire, to remind people that even the greatest stars are human, and that human struggles are universal. "They do," Riley whispered, her gaze returning to the open Bible. She saw her own struggles mirrored in Elvis's words, the desire for authenticity, the pressure to conform, the search for purpose. This wasn't just a fan's dream come true, it was a profound learning experience, a connection that transcended time and fame. "You can come here as often as you like," Mr. Henderson offered, his voice gentle. "Read it, study it. But I ask that you treat it with the respect my father did. And perhaps when you leave here, you'll carry some of his wisdom with you, not just in your mind, but in your music." Riley looked at the worn leather cover, then back at Mr. Henderson. "I will," she promised, her voice filled with a new resolve. "Thank you. Thank you so much." She felt a fresh surge of inspiration, a well that had been dry for so long suddenly overflowing. This wasn't just about reading Elvis's notes, it was about internalizing them, letting them guide her, letting them shape her own journey. The revelation of the king's heart had not only revealed a deeper Elvis, but also a deeper path for Riley herself. Riley returned to the music store every morning as if drawn by an invisible thread. Mr. Henderson would nod a silent greeting, and she would slip into the quiet back room, losing herself in the pages of The King's Heart. Each session felt like a private conversation with Elvis, a unique dialogue across decades. The first few days, she focused on what felt like introductory notes, the ones that laid bare his vulnerability, She noticed a pattern. He often marked passages that spoke of inner strength, of perseverance through trials beside a verse about enduring hardship. She found a note, "The stage is bright, but the road is long. Gotta keep walking even when tired, especially then." Riley underlined her own copy of lyrics she was working on. Her own road felt long right now. Her own stage felt distant. Elvis's words, scrawled in hurried handwriting, felt like a comforting hand on her shoulder. He understood the grind, the exhaustion, the need to keep going even when the dream felt heavy. Another note next to a passage about faith and doubt. "They say faith can move mountains sometimes. I just needed to move my own fear, to silence the voices that say, 'I'm not enough.' Do others feel this way too? Even when they clappa." This one hit Riley hard, the not enough. She imagined Elvis surrounded by adulation, still wrestling with those same demons. It stripped away the myth and revealed the human core. A man just like her, trying to find his footing, to believe in himself despite the inner critic. It made her feel less alone in her own struggles. She found notes about integrity, about staying true to oneself. One particular note, beside a verse about bearing fruit, "Don't let the applause change who you are inside. The real fruit is what you do when no one is watching. The kindness, the truth, the love, that's what lasts." Riley paused, her pen hovering over her notebook. She had always chased the applause, the external validation. But Elvis, the ultimate recipient of applause, was reminding himself to focus on the internal, on the character. It was a profound lesson in humility. And on the character, she noticed that many of his notes weren't just personal reflections, but also questions he was constantly seeking, constantly probing. He was asking the big questions about life, purpose, and legacy. What is legacy more than records sold, more than movies? Maybe it's the heart you share, the light you leave behind. Riley spent hours tracing his handwriting, feeling the connections soaking in his thought. She saw not just the king, but a son, a friend, a man who yearned for genuine connection, who felt the weight of his responsibilities. One day she found a page where he had simply written in bold, almost angry strokes, "Lonely," and below it, in smaller, softer script, "Even in a crowd, how do I fill this empty space? Only God can." Trying to remember that. It was a stark, heartbreaking admission. Riley felt a lump in her throat. The man who had everything, who was surrounded by millions, felt profoundly lonely. It was a reminder that external success often had little to do with inner peace or contentment. Mr. Henderson would occasionally come back, offering a quiet cup of tea or just sitting nearby watching her. He never interrupted her reading, but sometimes as she closed the Bible for a moment, he would offer a small observation. "My father believed that Elvis's search for meaning was just as important as his music," he said one afternoon. "Maybe even more so, because the music came from that search, that deep well of feeling." Riley nodded, her eyes still misty from a particularly poignant note about vulnerability. "It's like he's talking directly to me," she said, her voice quiet. "Not as a fan, but as a person, as someone who understands the struggle." "He understood the human heart," Mr. Henderson affirmed. "That's why his music touched so many, and these notes, they show you the source of that understanding." Riley felt a shift happening within her. The creative block that had paralyzed her for months was slowly dissolving. Ideas were sparking, not just for melodies, but for lyrics that held more depth, more truth. She wasn't trying to sound like Elvis or anyone else. She was just trying to sound like herself, but a self that was now more connected, more aware. She began to see that Elvis's profoundness wasn't about complex philosophy, but about raw, honest humanity. It was about facing life's biggest questions with courage and humility. It was about seeking truth even when it was uncomfortable. And that, Riley realized, was the deepest inspiration of all. It was a glimpse, not just of the king, but of a shared human journey, etched in the margins of a personal Bible, and she was just beginning to explore its depths. As Riley delved deeper into the king's heart, the notes began to shift, revealing more intimate facets of Elvis's life and emotions. She started noticing patterns of underlined verses and scribbled thoughts that spoke directly to the universal experiences of love connection and the ache of loss. One page, well-worn and slightly creased, held several notes around passages concerning love, faithfulness, and family. Beside a verse about enduring love, Elvis had written, "Love is not a song, it's a garden. Needs tending, needs water, needs light, and sometimes it needs fighting for. Have I fought hard enough?" Riley paused, a pang in her chest. She thought of her own past relationships, fleeting and sometimes shallow. Elvis's words, so honest and self-questioning, painted a picture of a man who understood the hard work of love, not just the romantic ideal. It was a powerful reminder that true connection required more than grand gestures. It required consistent effort and vulnerability. Further down, beside a verse about a family's bond, "My mama, my the one who truly knew me, the only one, the hole she left it never truly fills. God help me carry this." A wave of sadness washed over Riley. The deep love Elvis had for his mother, Gladys, was well documented, as was the profound grief he experienced after her death. To see it expressed so simply, so rawly, in his own hand, was heart-wrenching. It was the ache of a son, not a superstar. It reminded Riley of her own grandmother gone too soon, and the empty space she'd left behind. It was a universal echo of loss that transcended fame. She found other notes about betrayal, about the difficulty of trusting when you're constantly surrounded by people who might want something from you, beside a passage about forgiveness. Easy to forgive those who wrong you. Small, harder to forgive those who break your heart. But gotta try for my own peace, not theirs. This note showed a man wrestling with hurt, trying to navigate complex emotions in a very public life. Riley recognized the struggle to forgive, the desire to protect oneself from further pain. Elvis was teaching her through his notes that these battles were fought within, regardless of one's external circumstances. She found a section where he had underlined verses about loneliness, even amidst companionship, and his notes reflected this profound isolation. "Sometimes I'm surrounded by people, but I feel like I'm on an island, searching for that one soul who truly sees me. Not the crown, not the music, just me." This particularly struck Riley. She herself often felt a similar disconnect in her desire for authentic connection, even with friends and family. Elvis, with all his fame, was articulate about this deep human need to be seen and understood for who you truly are, not just for what you do. It made her reflect on her own relationships and the depth of connection she truly sought. Mr. Henderson, noticing her deep engagement with this section, quietly came and sat beside her one afternoon. "My father said that Elvis's notes on love and loss were the most poignant," he said, his voice soft, "because they showed how deeply he felt and how much he truly yearned for simple human connection amidst the chaos of his life. He was a giver, but he also needed to receive, like all of us." Riley looked up, her eyes still damp. So personal, so real. It's not just about a famous person's feelings. It's about what everyone goes through. The wanting to be loved, the pain of losing someone, the struggle to forgive, the gently. That a man who seemed to have everything struggled with the very same things that we all do, and he found a way to articulate it, even if just to himself, in these pages. Riley closed her eyes for a moment, letting the emotions wash over her. She imagined Elvis late at night, alone with his Bible, pouring his heart onto the pages. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about being human, flawed, yearning, loving, losing. This deepening understanding of Elvis's emotional landscape started to seep into Riley's own creative process. Her music had often been about the grand themes of ambition and dreams. Now she felt a pull to write about the quiet, universal moments. the bittersweet ache of memory, the quiet strength found in vulnerability, the resilience of the human heart in the face of loss. She realized that the deepest emotions, the most relatable struggles, were often the most profound, and Elvis, through his private notes, was showing her the way. As Riley continued her journey through the King's heart, a new theme emerged with increasing clarity: Elvis's complex relationship with his own fame. The notes became more reflective, sometimes bordering on weary revealing the profound burden that came with being one of the most recognizable figures on the planet. She found numerous annotations around passages dealing with pride, humility, and the dangers of worldly possessions. Beside a verse about the fleeting nature of earthly glory, Elvis had written, "They build you up so high they forget you're still standing on earth. The view from up here is lonely, and the fall always feels near." Riley felt a chill. She'd always seen fame as the ultimate goal, the pinnacle of success. But Elvis's words painted a stark, almost frightening picture of its isolating effects. He wasn't just talking about being alone. He was talking about being so elevated that it became difficult to connect with reality, with other people, with his own true self. It was a warning, a profound insight from someone who had experienced it all on another page, next to a passage about serving others. "They want me to serve them with entertainment, but who serves my soul? Who sees the man who is tired, who is lost, who is just trying to do good? This crown is heavy." The image of the heavy crown struck Riley deeply. She pictured Elvis, not just the glittering performer, but the man underneath bearing an immense weight that few could comprehend. This was not the ego talking. This was the exhaustion of a human spirit. It made her reconsider her own aspirations. Was the crown she sought truly worth the potential burden? He often underlined phrases about inner peace and tranquility, and his notes beside them were full of yearning. Just 5 minutes of quiet where no one wants anything, where I can just be. Is that too much to ask? Riley imagined the constant demands, the endless public appearances, the lack of privacy, made her appreciate her own quiet moments, her ability to disappear into a crowd, something Elvis could never do. His longing for simple solitude, a basic human need, was palpable in those words. He wrestled with the concept of idolatry, of people worshiping him instead of what he represented. Beside a verse about putting God first, "They call me king, but there's only one king, and it's not me. Must never forget that, must remember where the true strength comes from, and it ain't from their screams." This note showed his deep spiritual humility, a desire to deflect the adulation and remain grounded in his faith. It was a profound statement about maintaining one's moral compass in the face of overwhelming adoration. Riley reflected on how easy it would be to get lost in the ego, to believe the hype. Elvis's internal struggle to stay humble was a powerful lesson. Mr. Henderson often watched Riley as she read these sections, his expression thoughtful. One afternoon he spoke, his voice tinged with a quiet melancholy. "My father saw these notes as a cry for help." In a way, Elvis loved his fans, he truly did. But the fame became a cage and he was trying to find a way to breathe inside it. Riley nodded, her fingers tracing the words on the page. "It's so sad. He had everything, and yet he was so clearly searching for something simple, something human, something fame couldn't give him." Exactly, Mr. Henderson agreed. He knew that true happiness, true peace wasn't found in the external. It was found in the internal. And he poured that search into these pages. It was his way of reminding himself of what truly mattered. Riley thought about her own dreams of making it big, of selling out stadiums. Suddenly those dreams felt more nuanced, more complex. It wasn't just about the glory, it was about the responsibility, the pressure, the potential for isolation. Elvis's notes weren't just a glimpse into his past. They were a profound warning, a guide for anyone aspiring to walk a path in the public eye. She began to see that his musical performances, especially later in his career, carried this weight: power, The intensity, the raw emotion, it wasn't just showmanship. It was a man pouring out his soul, wrestling with the very fame that defined him. His notes, more than any biography, revealed the true cost of wearing the crown, and the quiet strength it took to carry it with grace, even when it felt too heavy to bear. Profound lesson for Riley was clear. Success can be a blessing, but it can also be a burden, and true strength lies in navigating its complexities with humility and an unwavering connection to one's authentic self. The deeper Riley delved into the King's heart, the more she saw Elvis's notes focusing on themes of finding purpose, dealing with doubt, and seeking inner peace amidst the relentless demands of his life. These were the notes that truly began to resonate with her own search for direction and creative fulfillment. She noticed passages about light in darkness, about unwavering faith in the face of uncertainty. Beside a verse about walking through trials, Elvis had written, "They see the sparkle, I feel the dust, but the dust helps you grow. If you let it, don't curse the dirt, use it." She had been cursing her own dust, the rejections, the failed auditions, the feeling of being Elvis, through his simple, profound words, was reminding her that challenges weren't roadblocks, but opportunities for growth. It was about perspective, about embracing the difficult parts of the journey as much as the triumphs. Another note, next to a verse about seeking wisdom. The answers aren't in the headlines or in their screams. They're in here. In the quiet, in the seeking. Never stop looking inside. Riley recognized the frantic energy of her own generation, constantly looking outward for validation, for direction. Elvis, despite being the ultimate external validation, was emphasizing the importance of introspection, of finding one's own truth. It was a profound lesson in self-reliance and the power of inner knowing. This insight was especially important for Riley as an artist. It encouraged her to look to her own feelings and experiences for inspiration rather than mimicking others. He wrestled with the concept of his gift, his voice, his charisma. He didn't just see it as talent, but as a divine assignment, beside a verse about using one's talents wisely. This voice, it's not just mine, it's a borrowed gift. What am I doing with it? Am I lifting hearts or just shaking hips? Both are needed, but one lasts longer. This made Riley think deeply about her own music. Was she just aiming to entertain, or was there a deeper message she wanted to convey? Elvis was challenging her from beyond the grave to consider the impact of her art, to use her gift for something more meaningful than just personal gain or fleeting fame. It was a call to artistic integrity and social consciousness. She found several notes about facing doubts and insecurities even for someone as iconic as him. One note scribbled next to a verse about trust. Doubt is the shadow of purpose. Can't have one without the other, but the light is stronger. Trust the light, trust the path. This was incredibly comforting for Riley, who was constantly plagued by self-doubt. To know that Elvis the King felt it too, but chose to trust a larger purpose, was immensely reassuring. It wasn't about eliminating doubt, but about acknowledging it and choosing to move forward. Mr. Henderson often observed Riley with a thoughtful expression as she pored over these particular sections. One afternoon, he brought her a fresh cup of herbal tea. "My father believed these were the most powerful notes," he said, indicating the open Bible, because they showed Elvis's journey from just a performer to a man seeking true purpose. It's not about being perfect, but about being persistent in your search for meaning. Riley nodded, her eyes still on the page. "It's like he's guiding me. All those doubts I have about my own path, my own music. He's felt them, and he found a way through. He's telling me to keep going, to look inward, to use my voice for something that truly matters." And his spiritual journey, his search for peace, was just as profound as his musical one. They were intertwined. Really, the music was the expression of that inner life. Riley felt a profound sense of connection to Elvis that transcended the fan-idol relationship. It was a shared humanity, a shared journey of self-discovery. Her creative well, once dry, was now bubbling with new ideas, new melodies, new lyrics. These notes were not just words. They were seeds, planting themselves in her heart, inspiring her to create music that wasn't just catchy, but meaningful. She started incorporating these insights into her songwriting process. She wasn't just writing songs, she was trying to convey the wisdom she was gaining, the lessons about perseverance, integrity, and purpose. Elvis's profound reflections were not just personal revelations. They were universal truths, and Riley was beginning to find her own voice to share them. The path to inner peace and purpose was not a straight line, but a constant journey of seeking, and Elvis, through his handwritten notes, was a compassionate guide. As Riley spent more time with the King's heart, a fascinating connection began to emerge. The explicit link between Elvis's profound spiritual notes and his iconic music. It wasn't just about his gospel recordings, it was about how his inner journey, his questions, his faith, and his struggles imbued all of his music with a deeper meaning. She started cross-referencing his notes with songs she knew. She found a particularly poignant note beside a passage about resilience and finding strength in adversity. When the world gets too much and the soul feels heavy, sing loud, sing honest. The music can carry what words alone can't. It's a prayer without knowing it. Riley immediately thought of his powerful ballads, the way he could pour every ounce of emotion into a song. It wasn't just technique, it was raw, unfiltered feeling, a release. This note gave her a new appreciation for the emotional depth of his performances. His music was his outlet, his confessional, his way of connecting with that something bigger he often wrote about. She found annotations about giving and receiving, about using one's influence for good, next to a verse about shining light into the darkness. My voice can reach millions. A gift. What message do I carry? Not just fun, but hope, love, maybe a little peace. They need it. This note made Riley think of Elvis's charitable giving, his spontaneous acts of kindness, but also of the sheer emotional power of his performances. He wasn't just singing for applause. He was singing with a mission, a desire to uplift and connect. He saw his music as a vehicle for more than entertainment. It was a profound realization for Riley that her own music could carry a message, a purpose beyond simply getting a record deal. She also found notes that seemed to directly influence his song choices or the way he interpreted certain lyrics. For example, beside a passage about loneliness and yearning for companionship, this feeling, it never leaves. But in a song, I'm not alone. And maybe neither are they. This resonated with countless Elvis songs about heartbreak and longing. It wasn't just singing about love lost. It was a deep, personal expression of his own profound sense of isolation, universalized through his art. Riley felt a deeper understanding of songs like Heartbreak Hotel or Can't Help Falling in Love. They weren't just pop hits, they were echoes of a deeply searching soul. Mr. Henderson, seeing Riley's excited gestures as she connected a note to a specific song, smiled. My father always said that if you wanted to truly understand Elvis's music, you had to understand his heart. And these notes are the blueprint for that heart. It's like he channeled his inner world into his psalms. Riley mused aloud, her eyes wide with revelation. The vulnerability, the longing for peace, the struggle with fame, it's all there, disguised in melody and rhythm. Precisely, Mr. Henderson agreed. His gospel music was explicit. Of course, the ballads carried that yearning, that spiritual undertone. He was a deeply feeling man, and his music was the grand expression of all those feelings, all those questions. Riley felt a powerful surge of inspiration. Her own songs had often been about surface emotions, about love and heartbreak in a generic sense. Seeing how Elvis poured his profound personal struggles into his art, how he used his music as a form of self-expression and a way to connect on a deeper, more spiritual level, transformed her perspective. She started writing in a new way. Her lyrics became more introspective, more honest. She wasn't afraid to explore her own doubts, her own longings for connection and purpose. She found herself trying to weave the lessons from Elvis's Bible notes into her melodies. Resilience, humility, the beauty of vulnerability. Her melodies, too, began to reflect a deeper complexity, an emotional resonance she hadn't achieved before. She began to understand that true artistry wasn't just about technical skill or catchy tunes. It was about pouring your authentic self, your deepest questions and feelings into your work. Elvis didn't just sing, he felt every word, every note, because it came from a place of profound personal truth. And now Riley was learning how to do the same. The connection between the spiritual journey in the Bible and the powerful impact of his music became undeniably clear, showing Riley the true potential of her own artistic voice. It was a jetty moment where the King's message became her own muse. Weeks turned into a month, and Riley's visits to Mr. Henderson's music store became a cherished ritual. She had moved past simply reading The King's Heart to truly absorbing its wisdom. The words of Elvis Presley, scribbled in the margins of his personal Bible, had become a quiet guide, a constant source of introspection and inspiration. Her music had transformed. The melodies were richer, the lyrics more profound, infused with the humility, perseverance, and emotional depth she had gleaned from Elvis's notes. She no longer felt the desperate need to chase trends or imitate other artists. She was finding her own authentic voice, a voice shaped by the universal human struggles that Elvis had so intimately documented. Mr. Henderson noticed the change in her. Her eyes held a new light, a quiet confidence. She carried herself with a different kind of strength, one born of inner peace rather than external striving. He would often listen to her humming new melodies or hear her quietly reciting lyrics she was working on. One afternoon, as Riley carefully closed The King's Heart, its worn leather cover feeling like a warm, familiar friend, Mr. Henderson spoke. "You've spent a lot of time with that book, Riley. What do you think is Elvis's true legacy after all this?" Riley thought for a moment, tracing a finger over the title, The King's Heart. "It's not just the music, though, that's incredible," she began. "And it's not just the fame, though, that's undeniable. I think his true legacy is his humanity, his willingness to be vulnerable, to search for meaning, to wrestle with the big questions and to share that journey, even if only with himself. In those notes, he showed me that even when you have everything, you can still be lonely, still doubt, still search for peace, and that it's okay. In fact, it's what makes us human. It's what connects us." "My father would have agreed," Mr. Henderson said softly, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. He believed that the truest measure of a man isn't his accomplishments, but his character. And these notes reveal Elvis's character in a way nothing else can. They're profound, not because they're complex theological treatises, Riley continued, but because they're so simple, so raw, so honest. They're universal. They show that a king was also just a man, struggling, yearning, hoping. Riley thought of the dried-up well she'd felt just months ago. It's opened me up, not just creatively, but as a person. I used to be so focused on making it, on external success. Now I understand that the real success is internal. It's about staying true to myself, about finding my purpose, about putting my heart into my music, not for fame, but for connection, for sharing a message." She picked up her guitar, which she now always brought with her to the store. "Mr. Henderson," inquired, his eyes twinkling, "will you keep it to yourself?" Riley looked at her guitar, then back at the worn Bible. "No," she said with conviction. "I can't. It's too important. I want to share it. Not in a preachy way, but through my music. I want to write songs that carry that same spirit of vulnerability, of searching, of hope. Songs that remind people that it's okay to be human, to struggle, and to keep seeking your own truth. Mr. Henderson nodded. A deep static chord. My father would have been proud. He transcribed these notes so that the king's private journey, his true heart, wouldn't be lost. He believed it had the power to inspire others, to show them a deeper path. It has for me, Riley said, her voice filled with gratitude. And I hope it can for others too. His legacy isn't just in the records he sold, but in the enduring spirit of a man who looked for answers within, and found them not in fame, but in faith and honest reflection. She felt ready to write, ready to sing, ready to share. The physical king's heart might be a private treasure, but its message was universal, meant to be carried forward. And Riley, with her guitar and her newfound wisdom, was ready to be its messenger, carrying on the profound legacy of a man who was so much more than just a king. The small club in Memphis was packed a mix of curious locals, music lovers, and a few dedicated Elvis fans. Riley stood bagged, her heart pounding a rhythm against her ribs. There was a mix of nerves and exhilaration. Tonight was different. She wasn't just performing. She was sharing a piece of her soul, a piece of Elvis's soul, subtly woven into her music. Mr. Henderson was there, sitting at a small table near the front. His presence, a quiet anchor. He gave her a reassuring nod as she walked onto the stage, her acoustic guitar slung over her shoulder. The stage lights, though modest, felt like a spotlight, but tonight Riley wasn't afraid of the shadows they cast. She was ready to embrace them, to sing about them. "Hey everyone," Riley said into the microphone, her voice steady. "Thanks for coming out. I've been spending a lot of time recently with an old book, a very special book that belonged to someone truly legendary here in Memphis." She paused, a small smile playing on her lips. It was filled with his own handwritten notes, his private thoughts on life, love, faith, and the strange path that fame takes you on. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Some people exchanged curious glances. "And those notes," Riley continued, her voice gaining strength, "they showed me a different side of him. Not just the king, but the man, a man who wrestled with doubts, who sought peace, who understood that true strength comes from within, not from the loudest applause." She took a deep breath, looking out at the faces in the crowd. "Tonight, I want to share a new song. It's not a cover, not a tribute in the usual way. It's a song, inspired by the quiet wisdom I found in those pages. It's about searching for truth, about finding your own light, even when the road is long and the weight feels heavy." She strummed a gentle, melancholic chord, then began to sing. Her voice, usually powerful and clear, had a new tenderness, a raw vulnerability that captivated the room. "The world screams your name, bright as 1,000 suns. But the quiet whispers within are where the true path runs. Crown sits heavy, oh, the weight of gold. But the treasures found in stories only your heart has told." The lyrics were simple yet profound, echoing the themes Riley had absorbed from Elvis's notes. The burden of fame, the importance of inner peace, the search for authentic self. She sang about loneliness in a crowd, about the ache of loss, about finding purpose in the struggle, not just in the triumph. They say faith can move mountains, but sometimes it's just a whisper in the dark to quiet the doubts within you, to find that sacred spark. You chase the wild applause, the fleeting, fading cheer. As she sang, Riley closed her eyes for a moment, letting the emotion of the words flow through her. She pictured Elvis, late at night, scribbling his thoughts, pouring his heart onto the pages of his Bible. She felt a profound connection, a bridge built across time by shared human experience. The audience was hushed, captivated by the raw honesty in her voice. This wasn't just another song. It felt like a shared secret, a universal truth being gently unveiled. When she reached the final chorus, her voice swelled with a quiet hope. "So let the dust still settle. Let the road feel long and worn, for in the seeking you are whole, a new day being born." king wore a crown, but his heart it beat like yours and mine. Searching for meaning in the human and divine, the last note hung in the air, a soft resonant chord, then silence. For a long moment no one moved. Then a single person started clapping, then another, and soon the whole room erupted in applause. It wasn't the wild, screaming adoration for a legend. It was a warm, heartfelt appreciation for a genuine human connection, for a message that resonated deeply. Riley opened her eyes, tears glistening. Mr. Henderson was on his feet, his face beaming, a single tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. He gave her a thumbs up, a gesture of profound pride. As people came up to her after the set, their comments were different from usual. That song, it really got to me. It felt so honest. Where did you get that inspiration? Riley just smiled. From a very wise man, she would say, who wrote his thoughts in a very special book. She knew then that her journey had truly just begun. The notes in Elvis's Bible had not just inspired a song. They had changed her life. They had taught her that the most profound art comes from the most human struggles, and that the greatest legacy isn't built on fame, but on truth, vulnerability, and the quiet, unending search for meaning. She was no longer just a dreamer in Memphis. She was a storyteller, carrying forward a timeless message, guided by the quiet wisdom of a king who was also just a man. And her new beginning hummed with the promise of countless more songs, all steeped in the profound heart of a legend.